A common problem facing many martial artists is that despite having a good level of fitness, they keep finding themselves gassing out in situations that really shouldn't be happening, like hitting a heavy bag, mitts, or in sparring. And it's frustrating because they're training to improve this stuff, getting themselves in shape and working hard to be the best they can be, yet they always seem to hit a wall when it comes to certain activities. And the common approach is usually just to try and push harder in training under the impression that eventually the gas tank is going to level up, but in many cases this can actually cause the opposite to happen. So in this video I'm going to explain exactly why this happens and give you some simple methods to level up your combat specific stamina, and it'll give you a way to train very well consistently without burning out in the process. So as I mentioned in the intro section, this can be very frustrating because you feel like you're training to improve this stuff, yet the same thing keeps happening and you don't really know why. And the way we develop this stuff is different from traditional strength and conditioning aimed at developing certain areas, and you do certainly want to be doing that. But what I'm going to be speaking about are specific things that you can do in order to preserve your energy when you are training. But if you're not doing these, it really doesn't matter how much strength and conditioning you're doing or how fit you are, because it simply will not translate. The reason that many people are suffering with this issue is because the solutions simply aren't obvious, and in many cases are counterintuitive to the way the body naturally wants to react. And so learning to do this stuff is like a kind of training within itself, like a skill set that you have to constantly remind yourself to apply whenever you're going into your sessions. And I've often used the statement mindful repetitions when I'm talking about refining a specific technique, but this mindfulness approach is actually applicable to all parts of your training, and the area of developing stamina is no different. Now before we dive into the rest of the video, guys, I'd like to remind you that I offer one-on-one coaching currently, and you can book that in the link below. And please join my new Telegram group where I post helpful resources as well as things like tutorials and other just daily valuable insights that will help you guys out as well. So the first thing that I want to talk about causing this rapid fatigue when training is something most people aren't even aware they have, which is uneconomical movement. And this is why it's critical to be constantly working to refine your basics, because literally they are the foundation of everything. But we need to do that in a very specific way. A lot of people, when they get to a certain level of proficiency, just kind of forget about that and don't think about it anymore, and they just perform the techniques in exactly the same way from there on out, and they don't really progress in that area. But there are always ways where you can become better and more efficient, but they just become harder to spot the better that you get. This quickly becomes a problem because when your technique is uneconomical, then you waste a little bit of energy every single time you execute it, and this losing of energy adds up cumulatively over your whole session, which adds to that accelerated fatigue. Now this next point is something you've definitely heard me speak about before, but I'm going to dive much more in depth into it here, which is that you need to learn to relax. But the key word is continuously with whatever training that you're doing. And this will develop greater mind-muscle connection, so you're only engaging your muscles when absolutely necessary, then going straight back to relaxation once again to conserve your energy. Just as with the uneconomical technique I spoke about previously, if you're not able to relax sufficiently and have a lot of tension, then once again you're going to be using an unnecessary level of energy to execute the techniques, and that adds up fast during your sessions, and it'll also make all of your movements just look stiff and clunky.
I see stiffness.
And this is one of the key reasons that two people could do exactly the same training session, yet the guy who's able to relax more completely will have a way easier time of it, and he'll also be able to maintain his composure compared to the other guy that isn't doing that. Now it could be said that there are varying levels of difficulty when working upon this relaxation, and they depend upon the training method that you're actually using. So contrary to what you might think, this isn't so much a physical thing, but it's more like mental tension that then translates to physical tension in the body as a result. Now by far the easiest type of training to relax in is shadowboxing, for the reason that you aren't hitting anything and there's no feedback. The next level of difficulty will be hitting a heavy bag or something similar. And remember earlier in the video when I mentioned that a lot of the stuff I'm going to be speaking about here is contrary to how the body naturally wants to react. So when you have a heavy bag in front of you, if you're not mindful, there's going to be subconscious tension created within the body, because you know you need to assert more effort now, as well as things like taking into account your body's positioning so you don't hurt yourself, etc. A level up from that is working on the mitts. So now obviously you've got a live person holding the mitts for you and moving around, which is naturally going to switch you on more than just working solo on your own. And this is still something that happens to me to this day somewhat. Even with my experience, when it comes to hitting pads, it feels different to training alone, and I have to constantly remind myself of that principle of relaxation, especially when working upon something new. The targets are also smaller, and so there's less room for error, requiring greater accuracy, which can contribute to that subconscious tension even more. The most difficult level by far to remain relaxed is in sparring, because now we've got a live opponent moving around with us with real risk and zero predictability. When you're hitting pads, although you may work upon defense, it's generally choreographed and you know what's coming. Whereas in sparring, the shots are going to be firing back at you without any warning. And you may have noticed during sparring something quite surprising, which is that your best rounds can actually be the later ones when you get more tired, especially if you're doing a large number of rounds. And that's because you get to a point where you're almost forced to relax, and so you're not going to be as sort of twitchy as when you first started out. And the paradoxical thing about that is this actually makes you more effective in sparring when it seems like it should be just the opposite of that. So the solution to relaxing during all of those different training scenarios, whether it's shadowboxing, hitting the mitts, sparring or heavy bag, is to consciously relax your body once again when you recognize that you've got that tension. And you should aim to make this conscious relaxation kind of like an anchor throughout any training methods that you're using. It's like meditation in that sense, where you suddenly realize you've become lost in thought and then consciously return back to the breath. The next point is directly tied to relaxation, which is learning to breathe properly in your sessions. Again, this is going to be something that is unnatural at first, and you're going to have to teach your body to do it. And you do this by thinking about it or reminding yourself, then doing it to the point where you no longer have to remind yourself anymore, and you just do it without thinking. Breath holding is a really common issue, especially when learning something new, because you're concentrating. And again, this becomes very apparent with the different types of training, with sparring being the easiest to forget that you're holding your breath because you're so focused upon not getting hit. The next common issue is that you're putting too much power into all of your shots. And this doesn't matter how fit you are currently either, because the energy you use in order to strike is specific to your unique body and will go up in direct correlation as your stamina increases as well. So it doesn't work in the sense that many people think if they just get fit enough then they'll be able to throw every single shot with power. And many people are trying to actually hit way too hard for their current ability level anyway, and it's a common complaint that people are hurting their hands, especially when hitting heavy bags and things like that, which really shouldn't be happening. And I think a lot of what's to blame for this is actually social media, where a lot of people only show their best punches, their hardest hits and stuff like that. And even YouTube clips of boxers titled things like blasts the heavy bag or destroys the heavy bag or something like that. But this is certainly not how these people train continuously and all the time. Somebody I always like to use as a good example of this is Mayweather. Whenever you watch Mayweather, he's always hitting the bag very lightly and is incredibly relaxed, only adding the occasional more powerful shot every now and then. And this mirrors what it's like to actually have a fight, where you've got to pick your shots and how much power you need to put into each one. The one thing that ties all of this stuff together though, that I've mentioned already, is mindfulness within your training. Because if you're not aware of what you're doing, it's too easy to become tense quickly and gas yourself out. And you'll want to practice all of these different things at the same time, because really they're all interconnected and affect one another. So if you're being mindful, then you'll make sure that you're breathing correctly, and that's going to make it easier to relax and so on. All of these things contribute into training performance. Now also, as you become fitter through consistent training, your base level of intensity will increase. So where you are now at your base level, where you can continue to go at that pace without too much trouble, would once have been really tiring for you. Which is once again why you shouldn't try to copy the pace and intensity level of somebody you're watching, and instead work with your own level, aiming to increase that intensity gradually over a prolonged period, so then you're able to maintain a high volume of training, which is the key to progressing the fastest without getting yourself burned out. If you like this video guys, then you should check out this video next, which dives more deeply into relaxation and will apply to all of the other things I covered in this video. Please join my free Telegram group where I post extra value that I can't really share on YouTube, as well as if you want to book a one-on-one coaching call with me to help with any aspects of your training, you can find the link to both of those below. I'll see you in the next video.